Hey everyone, welcome back to another Science Sunday. This week we're actually celebrating our graduates, so good job for getting through another school year, and for our fifth graders who are moving on to middle school. We wish you the best, and we're sure we'll see you around, and we're excited that you get to move on to new adventures. As a part of this lesson, I kind of want to encourage those who are, progressing along and getting older and starting to mature and learn new things. I thought we could take an example from a figure from the Bible. Timothy was a young believer who was, who was helping out Paul the apostle, and he looked to him as a mentor to help him know, the right way to approach progressing in his faith, progressing in, his maturity. And I want to encourage you guys that, it's important as we get older and as we are learning things that we look to the right examples. The God's word is filled with advice, and it shows us how we should live, and it's meant for our benefit to help us and to encourage us. But it's very often we can easily get drawn away from that, by people and things that are not great influences on our lives. And the book of Timothy is all about Paul encouraging, his young fellow believer in the way that he should be maturing and learning and growing in his faith. So let's read a couple of passages from there. So in 2 Timothy 2, he says, "Do the best you can to be the kind of person that God will approve, and give yourself to Him. Be a worker who is not ashamed of his work, a worker who uses the true teaching in the right way. Stay away from those who talk about useless worldly things. That kind of talk will lead a person more and more away from God." And then in 1 Timothy 6, he says, "Timothy, God has trusted you with many things. Keep those things safe. Stay away from people who say foolish things that are not from God. Stay away from those who argue against the truth. They use something they call knowledge, but is not really knowledge. They say they have that knowledge, but they have left the true faith." So he's just encouraging him to make sure that, yes, be in the word. That's the most important thing. Surround yourself with people who will encourage you and build you up, and help you to mature and develop, both spiritually, emotionally, growing your maturity, in your knowledge, and stay away from people who are encouraging you towards just worldly things that really have no meaning. That's so. I just wanted to, to encourage our graduates who are moving on to middle school, and then everyone in our children's program, that you're growing up, you're learning all kinds of new things, but be discerning, be aware that there are things out there that we should be staying away from, and that we want to be learning, the right way to be living and the right way to be maturing and growing in our faith. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to take a look again at Kerbal Space Program, and mainly, I know we've done this a few times before, but I wanted to show this one last time because just a few weeks ago, we had kind of a historic event. NASA launched the first space launch from the U.S. in about 9 years. So it's been almost a decade since a rocket was launched into space from the U.S. And the first one since then was launched just 2 weeks ago. It was the booster was called Falcon 9. And they launched two astronauts into space, and they docked with the International Space Station. And I thought it'd be fun to show that same thing here today. So we're going to use Kerbal Space Program to kind of reenact that mission and show you how they got up into space, how they intercepted the International Space Station, and then how they docked with it. And so I've got it all loaded up here. So let's go over to that. So for those of you who watched the launch, this is a recreation of the Falcon 9 rocket, which is this bottom part right here. And then here at the top is the astronaut capsule. This is where the astronauts are sitting. And there's two astronauts in here. And this part's called Dragon. And so this disconnects after it gets into space. So we're going to do a launch here. You know, we did this a few weeks ago, so I'll go through this part quickly and get us into orbit. Remember, we're going to spin around the Earth. And then once we do that, then I'll show you how we find the space station, how we dock to it. So that's going to be the interesting part. So I'll speed up through this, and yeah, we'll get into space here. All right, so at this point, we've disconnected the back end, the first stage, which is the Falcon 9 rocket, and now we are on our second stage, which is a separate engine, a separate fuel tank. And what this does is it allows us to let go of all this unneeded weight. So we don't need that anymore because it's empty. So now we have this smaller craft, and we can be more efficient by just using this craft to get us into orbit. So you can see here we're this high above the Earth, 77 kilometers, which is not accurate in in real Earth space flights. This is a simulation. So in this simulation, this height is outside the orbit or outside the atmosphere of this planet. So now we're just circularizing our orbit, which means that we're burning to go faster and faster around. And you see this blue area right here. That circle is getting larger and larger until it's going to spin all the way around the planet. And we want to circularize so that we'll continue to spin around even without using our rockets or thrusters. So here we're just going to make this go out a little further. And that's good. That's it. So now we are in a stable circular orbit and we'll just go around and around forever. So at this point, now what we have to do is we are right here and we're trying to get over here. And so my spacecraft is behind the International Space Station and we're both spinning around the Earth, but I'm behind it. So I need to catch up to him. Now, an interesting thing about orbital dynamics, and this is really fascinating, is that you can't just go faster, because if I go faster, my orbit is going to go further out, and so it's going to be a bigger circle. So the way that you want to actually catch up to another spacecraft is you want to have an orbit that's closer to the Earth. And the way that works is kind of like if you're running on a track, like if you're doing track and field, the person who's running on the inside track is actually running a shorter distance than the person running on the outside track. So if you're running at the same speed, the person on the inside track is always going to catch up to the person on the outside track. And that's the same idea here. When we're spinning around the Earth, if I am in a lower orbit, I am actually going to catch up to a craft that's in a higher orbit. So that's what we're going to do here is we're going to catch up to the space station by maintaining a lower orbit. And then we're just going to fast forward and we're going to see how we'll catch the space station. You can see here already we're kind of getting a little closer. And I'm actually going to make my orbit even smaller to be able to catch the the space station even faster. So I'm going to lower down. It's called apoapsis, and we're going to lower it, get it as low as we can. We don't want it too low because then we'll end up back in the atmosphere. All right, that's pretty good. Now you can see that we're clearly on an inside track. We're going to eventually catch up to the space station. I'm going to fast forward here so we can see that. So now we're actually very close to the space station, and we are going to see if we can see it. We're going to slow down so that we don't fly past it. I don't know if I can see it yet. This might be it. Yep, that's it right there. That square right there. You can see it's 3 kilometers away, and we're getting closer and closer. And once we get close, as close as we can to it, look, it's going to fly right past us. So now what we're going to do is we're going to slow down in relation to that so it doesn't fly past us. Fire our thrusters here and slow down. Look at that. Here we go. And now in relation to the space station, we should be traveling almost identically around the Earth at around the same speed. Okay, that looks good. Okay, we're actually floating towards it. And if you look, now our orbits are identical. They're exactly the same between my spacecraft and the International Space Station. So there it is. It's right there. That's how you match and intercept another object in space. You just find the right orbits. You let one catch up to the other, and then you slow down in relation until your orbits are perfectly aligned. And now there it is, just floating out in space. Now the last thing we got to do is go towards it and dock, which is fairly it's fun to do. So let's go and do that. Hey everybody. If you noticed, it's much later now. I had some technical difficulties with what we were doing here, and I had to take a little break. But I am back, and I've got everything worked out, and we're repositioned. And you can see we've got our craft Dragon here, and he's well positioned and ready to dock with the space station. I've actually jettisoned the second stage so that now it's just the capsule that's gonna connect in. And at this point, we are actually basically in docking mode, and what that means is we're using our RCS thrusters. And if I didn't mention, that's these things right here that basically shoot out jets of compressed air or gas of some sort to move the ship around. And so what we're doing here is we're lined up with the space station, and we're starting to get closer and position ourselves um, to go right to the space station, and we're going to connect to one of these docking ports up here. All right, here's the really delicate part: is we're very, very slowly and carefully moving towards it, because if we go too fast, we can have some bad reactions here. We could run right into it and kind of crash into it, and that would be really bad news for everyone in both vessels. So here we just go nice and slow, kind of make sure this is lined up. And in real life, the crew is in here, um, and they have a kind of a limited view because they're inside their capsule. But they have cameras and whatnot that show, how close they are and how things are going with the docking. So here we're about 6 meters away. We're really close. We're just about to dock. And I want to just kind of float in. And there are clamps on this thing, so once it actually connects, it'll just translate down a little bit. And I think we're almost there. Okay. This is it. And there we go. Nice connection. Look at that. So now our Dragon capsule is mated, it's connected to the ISS, to the International Space Station. And at this point, they can open the hatch, and the crew can get out and they can go into the space station. In real life, there are 3 astronauts already on the space station, and so they've added 2 more from Dragon, and that's it. We've completed a successful mission to launch the Falcon 9 booster with the Dragon capsule on top, and we were able to rendezvous it with the space station, and everything's great. So that is in real life that happened, not too long ago, and the reason I wanted to show this was a couple of things. One, it's just really amazing that we're able to do this, but the other is that imagine all the things that had to go right. That to be able to first create these crafts in the first place, and then secondly to go through this amazing operation of getting into space and connecting these 2 vehicles together. They you had to listen to the experts. They had to do, they had to follow very precise instructions. And just imagine if there was just one person in all the people involved in this who said, you know what, I think I'm just gonna wing it, and I'm just gonna do whatever. Um, they a lot of things could have gone wrong. So it shows the importance of being thinking through things, planning well, and very especially listening to the right people. Taking getting advice from the right people, and knowing what path to take to learn and grow, um, and be able to set yourself up for success. You want to be very cautious that you're not listening to the wrong opinions about how to do things, because you can very easily be led astray, and things can go very wrong. And that's what God's word is for, is to guide us, to show us that in this incredibly complicated world, when so many things could go wrong, this is the path, this is the way you should walk, and how you should learn and grow and mature, in order to be successful, and to live a full and healthy life. All right, well, that's it. Thanks everyone for joining me in space one last time. I think we've covered pretty much everything there has to do with space flight. Maybe someday we'll talk about transferring orbits to other planetary objects like the moon or Mars or something like that. But we'll do that a ways down the road. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Sorry this video was late. The issues that I had were kind of complicated, but we got through. So thanks again. See you guys.